Hello again. So for my second video, this is very funny because I just went, and I noticed rewatching my previous video that I did that a lot, and it's something that I'm going to try and cut back on, but please bear with me because, as I mentioned before, I haven't really made videos like this. I'm not used to seeing myself on camera. I'm not used to talking to a camera. I'm used to talking to people, and I'm going to try and talk to you as if you are people, because you are people on the other end of this. Anyway, getting that aside, for my second topic, I want to talk about my relationship with watches. And I think I might have an easier time with this one because it's something that I really only developed a relationship with more recently. In fact, just in the last year or so, truly. So, my relationship with watches, I have memories going back of course, my dad wearing watches. My dad is a naval, he's in the Navy, Canadian Navy, and he has always worn watches. I remember his watch as well. It was something that he always had on him, going as far back as I can remember. Typically some sort of diver's watches. I don't even know the brand, which I feel very silly about now. Now that I'm into watches, I'm going to have this discussion with him and talk to him more about his watches because I'm very interested to see what he has had over the years for watches. I know Seiko is a brand that he has worn. I think possibly Tag Heuer as well. Brands that now I'm familiar with, so we could have a much better conversation about it. I digress. My dad wasn't actually the one who got me into watches. The man who got me into watches is the boss at my job. I work at a military surplus store. Basically, we sell firearms, military surplus equipment, outdoor camping gear, etc. And my boss, he wears a Rolex Submariner. Now, anyone familiar with watches is familiar with the Rolex Submariner. It is one of the grail watches for just about anyone who gets into collecting watches. James Bond wore the Rolex Submariner. Rolex is a name that I can say it and you probably know it even if you're not into watches, which maybe I'll do a video about the amazing job Rolex has done on branding, as well as Omega and some of the other high-end Swiss brands, but another topic for another time. Eric got me into watches because he was always wearing watches, and just kind of every so often I would almost say that he would tease me about the fact that I didn't have a watch. He'd say, well, why don't you get a watch? Why don't you sell some of these things and get a watch? Do this, get a watch. You know, you got to have a watch. And eventually I kind of caved and I said, well, you know what? Yeah, I will get a watch. I had this in my mind, and then one of the local characters came into our store, and he was selling a Seiko dress watch. And he wanted, $200 for it, significantly less than retail. And I said, oh, sure. Or Eric didn't want to buy it, so I said, I'll buy it. Yeah, why not? And my mom ended up paying me back for it to gift it to me as an early Christmas present. So I had my Seiko dress watch, and I was so proud of it. And, because Eric wore a Seiko a lot of the time, and I'd say, oh yeah, I got my Seiko, and I wear it all the time, and it got beat up. And then, after a short period of time, I sort of stopped wearing it. I didn't create the habit. I didn't form the connection with watches at the time, because it's something you sort of have to put effort into. I would say, you really need to make that effort, that it is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is put your watch on. Because if you forget about it for a couple days, you'll just stop wearing it. You won't even think about it, because we have our phones now. We don't need to wear a watch. People don't need to wear a watch anymore. Not like in the old days when we didn't have our cell phone with us all the time. Now it's just, oh, okay, check the time, no problem. Anyway, so actually probably a year later, 2 years later, I can't even remember anymore. I wanted to get another watch, and this time I wanted to get a Seiko diver's watch, like Eric had. He has diver's watches for the most part. So I ended up with a Seiko SBBN 031 Tuna. That was my first big watch purchase, and this is kind of going from looking at a watch as something that I would spend a couple $100s on, and I did a bunch of research, and I was really into the divers, and I was really into Seiko, and I found the tuna, and it just spoke to me. Something about that watch really spoke to me. It was sort of the industrial look to it. I've written a whole review of it. Maybe I'll put it up here at some point. Maybe not. I'm not certain yet. But that watch really spoke to me. The look of it, everything that it stood for as a mechanical piece that I would have on me at all times, did its job so perfectly. I really loved that watch. I still love that watch, and I still have that watch. And it was the watch that really got me into, buying watches that weren't just a couple $100. I mean, the SPBN 031, that's a $1,300 watch. It might have even gone up at the time of this video. And I kind of got the bug at that point. So as soon as I had that, I was like, well, what's the next step? Because that's how I get every hobby I do. I'm always like, I want to go to the next step. What is the next step? Where do I go from here? And I was immediately drawn to Omega because from my past, I remember James Bond and his watches, and I knew about the Pierce Brosnan Seamaster 300 because I was looking up divers, and I saw, well, best divers. Obviously, the Rolex Submariner was completely outside of the realm of possibility, sitting around $12,000. Not something I was prepared to do. Not something I had the money for either. So I said, I want an Omega. That was the next step, Omega. So I ended up getting off of eBay an Omega mid-size Seamaster 300 quartz. Essentially, I really didn't do enough research at the time. I was just so gung-ho about getting that Omega. The price was attractive, and it was a real Omega, certified. But when it arrived, I realized that it was a very small watch. And now going forward, I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I sold this watch, and I kind of regret it, but maybe we'll get to that later. I got that Omega mid-size Seamaster, and I was cool, but I was a little disappointed with it. And then I said, screw it, I'm just gonna go whole hog. If I'm gonna go whole hog, I might as well go whole hog. And I sold an item out of my firearms collection, which was, we'll talk about it another time again. This is going to happen a lot because I'm new to making videos. And I purchased a Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, a slightly vintage model, for around 3,500 Canadian dollars. I'm wearing it right now, actually.